Now we are dealing with the erosion. The source of the erosion, as we have seen, all the sources of the exogenic processes is solar energy and gravitational effect. Wind. First, we be having the wind, and then we have the precipitation. The river water carries the sediments. The coastal regions, coastal water. Underground water is karst topography. So when the river water carries the sediments, the coastal regions we have the coastal waters. In underground water, we will be having the karst topography. What is a glacier? Glacier is a huge block of the ice in elevated region. So we have a huge ice in the elevated region, and this ice is going to melt in the summer and it erodes most of the region. With these agents are in motion, carry the weathered material, and during its path it breaks down also. Erosion refers to the wearing away of the land surface by mechanical action of the debris derived from weathering. First, we need to go for the weathering, and when it is transported, it is wearing of the material also takes place as it is transported, as they are transported to different locations by agents like wind, water, glacier, etc. What are the types of the erosion? Maybe having the debris of weathering in motion. Through that processes it breaks down the material. Abrasion, attrition, right? Abrasion is nothing but wearing of a surface by mechanical processes like rubbing, scratching, polishing, etc. As it is moving, we'll be saying that there is rubbing, scratching, and polishing. So as it is moving, we say that there is rubbing, scratch, as well as there is polishes. This is what we call it as the abrasion. There is rubbing, scratching, and then the polishing is what we call it as the abrasion. As it is moving away, the wearing of the surface happens. Right. When it is moving naturally, the items are scratched, rubbing takes place. Now we will be having the abrasion. If it is taking place in the water, we call it as the corrosion. This is not corrosion, it is corrosion. When it is weathering or due to the mechanical processes. We have weathering, right? This weathering is happening due to the mechanical processes. It is called as if it is under the water, it is called as the corrosion. Rubbing, the agent is going to be here is water. Now what is attrition? Attrition involves a reduction in the size of the fragments by friction and the impact during transportation. It breaks down the load into finer sediments. There is a greater reduction of the size by friction and during the impact of the transportation. Right. It breaks down the load into finer sediments. It is what is called as an attrition. Erosion is within themselves. Both the wind and then we be having the water is going to happen. Corrosion is nothing but the agent of the water. The breaking action of the water is the universal solvent, right? It involves wearing away of the particles by the solvent and chemical actions of water. What is cavitation? Is the agent water, right? Cavitation along the waters, the water which is flowing in the river, when the water is flowing, it interacts with the air. These bubbles get accumulated at one corner and where the river turns, the accumulated bubbles burst together, it causes the erosion. It is what we call it as the cavity, when the cavities are filled up with the water. right? The cavities are filled up with the water. It creates cavities in the rivers. The collapse of the bubbles in the water in the river leads to the explosion, sending a shock wave which tends to disintegrate the adjacent rocks. Now, what is corrosion? The water, when the moving particles break down in the water through mechanical stress, it is corrosion. Attrition is when they are changed fragments, when they are becoming into smaller fragments. The erosion is within themselves, both the wind and then water are acting as a agent. Fragments by the impact of the friction, right? Now, what is abrasion? The wearing away of the surface. Here the processes like rubbing, scratching, it is rubbing, some scratches are there, and it is polished, but it is when it is breaking down, it is attrition. Abrasion, attrition, corrosion. Cavitation is water. Cavitation, deflation is in the arid regions, desert regions. Lifting and removal of the dust and the sand by the wind. It involves arid erosion, removal unconsolidated material. Deflation results in the deflation hollows. Hydraulic action. Similar to the corrosion, impact of the water as a solvent to melt the rocks. In case other rocks which are not melting, they are carried away and they are broken during the motion. Water motion, if it is breaking, it is hydraulic action. Water is solving and it is breaking, right? Water acting as a solvent. Corrosion, attrition, abrasion, and then we also have the deflation, cavitation, deflation. Plucking is the glaciers. As the glaciers move, they drag the rocks and disintegrate into smaller pieces. The glaciers are having one of the highest eroding capacities. Hydraulic action, it is flowing water, the pressure particles stationary. Abrasion is movement of the particles, rubbing and the friction. So these are the erosion. Next we have the mass movement is the mass wasting. In case when a large quantity of the materials are weathered, the debris in a large scale, it is landslide under the influence of the gravity. Natural is heavy precipitation and man-made is because of the quarrying. Flash floods due to the heavy precipitation. Volcanic eruption is Helen's mountain created a big landslide. The construction of the roads in the mountains, right? Now we are constructing a road here in the mountains. It causes the weight to construct the retention walls to hold the weight, but they are not constructed. Upper portion falls down, lower portion becoming weak. So the mass movement under the influence of the gravity is what we call it as a mass movements or mass wasting. Weathered material can move along the downhill slopes under the influence of the gravity with or without assistance of the running water. It is called as a mass movements. The mass movements is what we call it as the slow mass movements and the rapid mass movements. Slow mass movements is the creep or the solifluction, and the rapid mass movements are creep or solifluction when they are moving very slowly downwards. And the landslides, the earth flows, the mud, rock slide, rock fall, they are rapid movements. Landslide, the earth is flowing, the mud is flowing. Rock slide, rock fall. The high hill slope, the top layer weathered and weaker, very slow movement along the entire structure is what we have the creep. The creep and then solifluction. The slow downhill movement of the soil and weathered mantle occurring along the slopes is what we call it as a creep. The slow downward hill movement of the soil and weathered mantle occurring along the slopes is what we call it as a creep. It is difficult to notice, but it is a continuous movement. Solifluction is like a mixture of the soil and slurry material moving slowly, a very viscous liquid which is moving. The entire area it is moving slowly along with the trees, poles, etc. is what we call it as a creep. But when it is moving in a viscous water is mixed with the soil and it is moving in a slurry format, it is called as solifluction. These are slow movements. When in rapid movements we have a landslide. A section of the hill is cut off and sliding along the slope. So in the landslide, we say that a section is cut off and it is sliding along the slope. We say that more dry in nature. Right, the movement of a cross section of the hill under the influence of the gravity. A cross section, an entire cross section is moving under the influence of the gravity is what we have the landslide. The material maintains continuous contact with the surface as it moves. Earth flows, an entire section is got saturated with water. Now we have creep is when it moves, solifluction is when it gets contact with the water, landslide is dry, and then earth flow is when the entire section is getting contact with the water and it is saturated with the water and there is a larger movement. The earth flows from the terrace form on the terraces and the hillsides which are capable of flowage and when saturation with the water that occurs beneath the earth layer. We have mud flow. Mud flow is a rapid movement of the masses of compacted soil that are suddenly saturated with water. Rock slide. It is rapid movement of the rock materials along the mountain slopes. We have the rock fall. It involves the falling of the rocks in the vertical direction along with the cliffs and the mountains, right? Rock is sliding, rock is falling. Rock slides on the and rock is falling from a cliff. Rock falls. Rock slides, rock falls. Riverine landform is a landform which is created by the river. Then we have the process which are active over here. Karst topography is because the landform which is due to underground water. Marine is because of water of other coastal. Arid is a desert and glacial topography. We have riverine endogenetic forces upliftment. River erodes the mountains. Youth stage, mature stage and the old stage. The stages of the mountain we have takes place the when the river is very young, V-shaped cutting, U-shaped cutting, and alluvial deposition. It is no deposition, only vertical corrosion. Here erosion as well as deposition. Here where we have the later stage, we will be having the deposition alone. There is no erosion. Lateral corrosion. Meandering starts, energy of the speed of the river decreases, meandering the river flow in the zigzag manner. Very low speed of the water, it is very low energy. The floodplains, oxbow lakes, deltas, high level of the meandering due to very less slopes. Very high energy of river where it is fast, high speed river flow is straight and there is no meandering. Riverine, if it is because of abrasion, corrosion, attrition, corrosion, and then we have the cavitation, hydraulic action. Erosional features the V-shaped valleys. It is going to cut a deep gorge, and then we have the canyons are created. The slip of the meander when it is mature. Floodplains are created when excess of the water in the flood in the river floods the spread of the sediments over here. Levee is raised portion of the sediments in both the rivers, right? Plunge pool is because of the water is falling in a pool like manner and it is going to start potholes, and then we have the swirls. River in the mature stage, it is going to have more depositional features rather than the erosional features, and the river captures from the mountain to the plains. We'll be having the river water slows. The river water cannot carry the sediments, it is going to have deposition alone. The river capture might be a reason for the dry up of the Ganga plain. River Saraswati River turned towards the Ganga River and drained in the Rajasthan and Haryana. Levee is the old stage where deposition. Then we have karst topography found in the regions where limestones and underground water. Rainfall water is mixed with carbon dioxide. We have carbonic acid. Italy and Yugoslavia is famous for the karst topography. Italy and Yugoslavia. Mexico in the Yucatan city, Yucatan Peninsula, which is famous. It's a Mayan civilization. Conditions is the limestone topography. Moderate to the high. The precipitation, the erstwhile Yugoslavia, Italy, Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula, Western Australia. We have the karst topography, abrasion, corrosion, attrition. Abrasion is when it is moved and it is polished rubbing. Attrition breaking into pieces. Corrosion is the water, right? Now, erosional features is a sinkhole. We form a hole is formed over here. It is called as a sinkhole, and then the small depression on the surface. When the sinkhole becomes wider, it is called as shallow holes. So we have sinkholes and then we have the shallow holes. When multiple sinkholes join together, it becomes the shallow holes, right? Then we'll be having the ulavas and then the valley sinks. First is a sinkhole, shallow hole, and then we'll be having the When multiple sinkholes are joined together, it becomes ulavas or the valley sinks. When small streams on the surface, then underground. Valley where earlier water flowed and not now flowing is called a blind valley, right? Sinkhole, shallow cavity, the caves or limestone accumulation. Limestone accumulation in the roof is called a stalactite. In from the floor is stalagmite. From the roof is lactite, stalactite. From the ground is stalagmite. Stalactite and stalagmite merge to form the pillar. Marine topography is corrosion, abrasion, corrosion, attrition, hydraulic action, and cavitation. Waves are eroding to form a cliff. Wall cliff associated with a platform, a wave cut platform, right? So a wave cut platform is formed over here. Soft rocks at the beach, the bay is formed over here. We have a bay, and then we have here hard rocks. These hard rocks are unable to erode. Bay, beach, and then we have the soft rocks. Bay is surrounding the bay, we have a land. Bay is a water body which is surrounded by the land on all the three sides. Cliff creation on the place where the river meets the sea is what we have a hanging valley. River valley hanging in the cliff jumps to the ocean. Rocks are weaker, continuous hitting of the water in the weaker rocks creates caves, sea caves. Caves at both sides emerge, arc creation, natural bridge, arc, and then overhead portion of the arc collapses and stack. Stack reduces in size and it forms a small stack which is called a stump. The water comes out from the top blow hole. Depositional features is a narrow patch which is a creek beach. Due to deposition, it builds a platform, wave built platform, sandbar. It is connected to one side of the sand split. Sandbar is connected to on both sides. It's called tombolo. Barrier dune system creates a coastal lagoon. Now, in the arid topography, we have deflation. A hollow is being created over here, and then we have mushroom rocks and soft rock and hard rock continuous layer. Therefore we have longitudinal valley is called as Yugen and vertical valley is called as Yardang. Depositional features are sand dunes, barchen, and transverse sand dune, longitudinal sand dune. We have a lake, it is called as Bolson Lake or Playa. Glaciers accumulation, plucking and abrasion. Erosional features are Nivation Hollow, and here we'll be having the Nivation Hollow. Cirque is when the bigger depression on all sides. When two cirques form on the opposite direction, it is called arid. Multiple cirques on the four sides, it's called as a horn, right? We have depositional features like moraines. Along the side deposited laterite moraines, medial moraines, and end moraines. Drumlins are egg topography. Basket of egg topography are drumlins.